The rain had been falling steadily for hours across the streets of Madrid, turning the usual bustling evening into a quiet, subdued atmosphere, where most people hurried past with umbrellas and coat collars, sterned up against the November chill. Ronaldo, returning from a late training session at Real Madrid's Valdebebas facility, his black Bugatti Chiron purring through the empty streets, as she navigated toward his luxury penthouse in the exclusive La Finca neighborhood. The windshield wipers beat a steady rhythm against the glass and the warm leather. Interior provided a stark contrast to the harsh weather outside. He had been thinking about the upcoming Champions League match against Paris Saint-Germain, reviewing tactical formations in his mind, when something unexpected caught this attention at Ard traffic light near the Cuatro Caminos metro station. Huddled beneath a torn piece of cardboard against the wall of a close newsstand was an elderly man, probably in his 70s, with weathered hands and a gray beard that had seen better day. His clothes were layers of mismatched garments, clearly gathered from various sources over time, and his shoes were held together with what appeared to be duct tape despite the obvious hardship etched into every line of his face. There was something about his posture that suggested dignity. Even in these circumstances, she wasn't aggressively panhandling or making a scene. He simply sat quietly, trying to stay dry while cars passed by, most drivers avoiding eye contact as they waited for the light to change. Ronaldo had driven past homeless individuals countless times throughout his career in major cities around the world, and while he regularly donated to charities that addressed homelessness, there was something different about this particular moment. Perhaps it was the way the man sat still and resigned, or perhaps it was the fact that despite his circumstances, she seemed to be watching the traffic with genuine interest, rather than desperation. Whatever the reason, Ronaldo found himself pulling over to the side of the road about 50 meters past the intersection and sitting in his car for several minutes, trying to decide what to do. The rain continued to pound against this windshield, and he could see the homeless man in his rearview mirror still sitting in the same position, apparently unbothered by the weather. After what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 3 or 4 minutes, Ronaldo made a decision that would change both of their lives forever. He reached into his wallet and pulled out several hundred and opened his car door and stepped out into the rain, immediately feeling the cold water soak through his expensive tracksuit. As she walked back toward the intersection, his footsteps echoed off the wet pavement, and a few passing pedestrians did double takes as they recognized one of the world's most famous athletes walking through the rain toward a homeless man with no security detail or entourage in sight. As Ronaldo approached, the elderly man looked up from beneath his makeshift cardboard shelter, and their eyes met for the first time. What happened next would become one of the most extraordinary encounters either of them would ever experience, because instead of the typical confused recognition that Ronaldo usually received from strangers, the homeless man's face broke into a knowing smile, and he said in heavily Spanish, tinged with what sounded like Portuguese inflections, "Cristiano Ronaldo dos Santos Aveiro, born February 5, 1985 in Funchal, Madeira. You scored your first goal for Sporting CP against Moreirense in October 2002. The precision and warmth with which the man recited these biographical details left Ronaldo completely stunned, standing in the rain with water dripping from his hair as he tried to process what had just happened. The homeless man continued without missing a beat, his voice gaining strength and enthusiasm as he spoke. "I watched you play for Sporting when you were just 17 years old. I was living in Lisbon, then working as a sports journalist for Jornal de Noticias. I covered your debut. I wrote about your potential. I predicted you would become one of the greatest players in history, and I was right. Wasn't I?" Ronaldo stood frozen, not from the cold rain, but from the shock of this revelation. Here was a man living on the streets who not only recognized him, but had apparently been following his career from the very beginning, when he was barely more than a teenager, with dreams and raw talent. The homeless man, whose name Ronaldo would later learn was Manuel Ferreira, had indeed been a respected sports journalist for over 30 years, covering Portuguese football with passion and insight that earned him recognition throughout the country. His coverage of young, promising players had helped launch several careers, and his predictions about football talent had proven remarkably accurate over the decades. But a series of personal tragedies, including the death of his wife from cancer, the loss of their home to medical bills, and a subsequent battle with depression and alcoholism, had slowly eroded his professional life until he found himself unemployed, unemployable, and eventually homeless, moving from city to city across Portugal and Spain, trying to rebuild a life that seemed to slip further away with each passing month. Manuel reached into a plastic bag beside him and pulled out a newspaper clipping, yellowed with age and protected by a plastic sleeve. It was the article he had written about Ronaldo's debut match for Sporting CP, with a small photo of teenage Cristiano looking impossibly young and determined. "I've carried this with me for over 15 years." Manuel said, holding the clipping carefully, despite the rain. "Through everything that happened to me, I kept this because I knew I had witnessed the beginning of something special. I knew you would become exactly what you've become. And in my worst moments, when I had nothing else, this reminded me that I had been right about something important in my life." The emotion in his voice was unmistakable, and Ronaldo found himself deeply moved by this unexpected connection to his earliest professional days. Without hesitation, Ronaldo sat down on the wet pavement next to Manuel, ignoring the fact that his expensive clothes were getting soaked and that people passing by were starting to take photos with their phones. "Manuel," he said, having learned the man's name from their conversation, "I remember that article. Your words meant everything to me at that time when I was scared and uncertain about leaving Madeira. You wrote that I had the heart of a champion trapped in the body of a boy who would grow into something magnificent. Those words, I never forgot them. They helped me believe in myself when I was homesick and struggling in Lisbon." Manuel's eyes filled with tears as he realized that his words had actually reached and influenced the young player he had written about so many years ago. The conversation continued for over an hour, with both men sharing stories and memories. While sitting together on the wet street, Manuel told Ronaldo about his career in journalism, his love for football, his personal struggles, and his journey to homelessness, speaking with the articulate intelligence that had made him a respected writer, while Ronaldo listened with genuine interest and compassion, sharing his own memories of those early days at Sporting, and how certain articles and pieces of coverage had motivated him during difficult periods in his development. As they talked, a small crowd began to gather at a respectful distance, amazed to see one of the world's biggest celebrities sitting on a street corner in the rain having an animated conversation with a homeless man. But Ronaldo seemed completely oblivious to the attention, focused entirely on Manuel and their shared connection through football and fate. When their conversation began to wind down, Ronaldo stood up and helped Manuel to his feet. "Manuel, you're coming with me tonight," he said firmly, "and we're going to figure out how to get you back on your feet. Because someone who helped me believe in myself when I was 17 deserves better than sleeping on the streets." Manuel initially protested, insisting that he couldn't accept charity and that he had made his own choices that led to his circumstances. But Ronaldo cut him off. "This isn't charity. Manuel, this is gratitude. You invested in me when I was nobody. You believed in me before anyone else had reason to. Now I'm investing in you because I believe you have more to give to the world." The sincerity and determination in Ronaldo's voice left no room for argument, and Manuel found himself accepting help for the first time in years. That night, Ronaldo took Manuel to a luxury hotel near the city center and paid for a month-long stay while they worked together to develop a plan for Manuel's rehabilitation and reintegration into society. Ronaldo connected Manuel with addiction counselors, mental health professionals, and eventually with sports media organizations who were interested in hiring an experienced journalist. With his knowledge and background, within 6 months, Manuel had a small apartment, a part-time job covering local football matches for a regional sports website, and most importantly, his dignity and sense of purpose restored. He never forgot that rainy night when Cristiano Ronaldo sat with him on a street corner and treated him not as a charity case, but as a human being whose life had value and whose past contributions mattered. The story of their encounter spread through social media and eventually reached major news outlets around the world. But rather than focusing on Ronaldo's generosity, which is how most celebrity charity stories are told, this story resonated because it highlighted the unexpected connections that exist between people and the way that kindness can emerge from the most unlikely circumstances. Manuel returned to writing and eventually published a book about his experiences both as a sports journalist and as a homeless person, with Ronaldo writing the forewording, which he said, "Manuel taught me that every person on the street has a story, and that sometimes the people who seem to have nothing are actually the ones who have given the most to the world." The book became a bestseller in Portugal and Spain, with all proceeds going to organizations that help homeless individuals transition back into stable housing and employment. Years later, when journalists ask Ronaldo about his various charitable activities, he often mentions that rainy night in Madrid as a turning point in his understanding of how to use his platform and resources most effectively. I learned that the most powerful thing you can give someone is not money or gifts, but recognition of their dignity and their worth as a human being. He explains, Manuel didn't need me to save him. He needed me to see him as the intelligent, accomplished person he had always been, and to help him remember that himself. The encounter changed both men's perspectives on success, failure, and the random connections that can transform lives in unexpected ways, proving that sometimes the most meaningful moments happen not in stadiums or award ceremonies, but on rainy street corners, when two people recognize their shared humanity despite vastly different circumstances.